Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Learn with Jason. Today on the show, we've got Joyce Park. Joyce, how you doing?
Great. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm so happy to have you on the show. We were sabotaged by technology last time, but we did not give up. We're back. We're here, and we are live. So for folks who aren't familiar with you and your work, do you want to give us a little bit of a background before we get started?
Sure. I was the front-end lead at Friendster. So in some sense, this is all my fault. And I came out of the PHP community and into the JavaScript community. So I was one of the dojos who first came around. And as you know, when Dojo first started, everybody said, Dojo is the Java of JavaScript. And now our motto is more like Dojo did it first, because a lot of the ideas that happened around, having modules and compiling, which was something that JavaScript people hated when we did it. And all of those things are from Dojo. So then I joined the React community, and recently I've been doing Remix, which I think is a wonderful combination of the best ideas from PHP and React.
Yeah. It seems it's interesting because we've talked about this a lot on the show, but the general transition that we've seen as web tech has matured, it feels a little bit like we kind of explore an avenue as far as we can until we hit a wall, and then once we hit that wall, we kind of go around it, right? And then we hit the wall in that next technology, but in the meantime, that wall doesn't exist anymore. It's been solved. So now we can go back, and so we work around this issue by going back to this issue, and it turns into what feels circular, but is actually this upward spiral of progress. And so I've been really heartened to see the discussion about what, it was great to have JavaScript first, and then jQuery, and then Dojo, and then Backbone, and then Knockout, and then we got to Angular and React and Vue, and now we're seeing Svelte, and like so much good stuff happening out there where we're building on ideas, and we're bringing back stuff that was great at the time but started to hit its limitations, and now we can go further and further and further to see how far we can push things. And that actually feels like a little bit of a good segue into what we're going to talk about today with authentication, because I feel like this is one of those problems that is deeply challenging when we talk about authentication. So maybe I'll let you kind of kick us off here with wherever you want to start as we're leading toward Webauthn. And
so one of the things that I want to make really, really clear to people is that this isn't just an authentication technology. It's really about having a better user experience. And that is something that I feel like for the last 10 years or so, our profession has had issues with, because, it's been sort of monopolistic, in many areas. I think there was no thought that anybody could take out Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn, any of those things. And those people have like their own technical stacks, their own UX, and are those the best that we can do? So I'll give you an example. I don't know if you knew Tom Trinka, who recently passed away. But I hired him recently to think about what is the next gen message board. Like, we haven't been able to ask those questions, right? Because most of us have been working, making money, whatever. But we need to ask those questions, because that is, in fact, our job. Like, if new message board technology doesn't come from us, where's it going to come from?
Right.
And so one of the things that happened a few months ago was I was looking at a really great friend of mine, Aaron Boudman's um, Twitter, and he had a little thing, just a toss off thread where he said, Ajax or XML HTTP request or fetch, it was ignored for many years.
Mm-hmm.
It was possible to start doing Ajax in 1999, but nobody did.
Mm-hmm.
It took 5 years for Google to pick it up and show what was possible with Gmail and Maps. And we have many other capabilities today that most web devs don't know about. Like, for instance, did you know it's been possible to store hundreds of megabytes locally in web apps?
Mm.
Like, I didn't know that.
I also didn't know that. I thought we were capped at like 5 or something.
No, in fact, now you can store 50% of the hard drive in your user's browser.
Whoa.
Like, if you knew that, like, how would it change how you did things,
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of capabilities now in the browser that I feel like most people don't know about, because
Right.
most people have just been making money, and and good for you. Like, I'm not crapping on that, but most people don't know, I think, how many new things
Mm-hmm.
have been possible. And so that's really what my talk was about.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that really what I find interesting about this stuff is that we're playing a fun game with the web right now, where we are, as developers, we're like building around limitations of the platform in an effort to prove out that these are the things that we need to get our jobs done. At the same time, the platform developers are doing the work to continually like make improvements based on what they're seeing, like in user needs, in terms of what's being implemented in user land. Like jQuery is probably the most famous example of this. Like we were all using jQuery, and so the browsers implemented query selector.
Yes.
And that was a huge power up to the DOM APIs, because it was something that we desperately needed, and that's why everybody was reaching for jQuery to do it. And so what I've really liked to see is this sort of symbiotic relationship between platform developers and JavaScript developers, where both groups are pushing each other forward. And what I really like is when you can see that people are paying attention to both groups, because it's really easy to get into one group and then ignore the other groups. And we've seen this on both sides, where there's sort of like an absolutist approach that says like, well, you should only use JavaScript because the platform sucks, or you should only use the platform because JavaScript sucks.
Look, in the end, we are here to serve the user.
Right.
In my opinion.
Right.
Like, we're not here to serve each other. We're not here to like do cool stuff that only, 5 of our colleagues are going to see. We're here to make the user's experience better. Right. And that is what I want to see. And I feel like we've maybe stepped away from that as because a lot of the things I see now they're cool, but there's no evidence that it's going to help the user. So I'll give you an example. There's a lot of research that shows that just making things faster helps the user and the business, right? Like, you make it faster to buy something, the user's going to like you better, and the business is going to like you better.
Yeah.
But we have fallen off that, and now we argue about things like, should transitions be faster, or should like, I don't care if transitions are faster. If the user doesn't care, then I don't care. And there has never been any research that shows that the user cares that things like transitions are faster.
Interesting.
There just never has. I've never seen it. I've asked for it on my feed. I've asked people that I meet at conferences, and there's never been any research, as far as I know, that shows that it matters whether transitions are smooth or transitions are fast or transitions are like, whatever. What users care about is things look like real.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're going to be fast, and they're going to um, maybe what you're going to see on the screen is going to align with your values. That's what
Mm-hmm.
users care about, in my view.
Yeah, and I think, you know, we are technologists, and therefore we focus on the details of what we're building.
Yeah.
But when I go to book a flight, I'm not going to use the flight booking app because it's a little frustrating to use, because I want that service. And like, if there was an equivalent service that had better performance, sure, I would choose that. And we see that
Right.
sometimes where there's kind of a mass shift from one platform to another. And we definitely are looking, you know, users want something that feels better to use.
Right.
But I think the minutia is less critical than we make it out to be, and instead we should be looking at, you know, what are people doing today that frustrates them. And
Yeah.
I think, you know, one of the things that I find deeply frustrating is password management.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
and
Password management.
and so like I think, and I watched this happen at several companies where you join a company, and at first the way that password management is done is somebody will DM you the password if you need it, which is terrifying. Right? That's maybe not the way that we want that to roll. But then as you grow, you start looking into one password or KeyPass or some solution where you're going to actually centrally manage these passwords in an encrypted way, and then you're changing access. But
Except
then,
it really
okay,
doesn't work.
it doesn't really work because you've still got lots and lots of people with access to this same set of credentials. And so any shared login is potentially a security problem. And if you've got people joining and leaving the company, you have to roll them all the time, which nobody ever does. And so you end up with these challenges of just like constantly leaky while also being cumbersome password management. And then the team says, oh, well, in order to really make this secure, we're going to add a second factor. So you need to add your cell phone, or you need to add an authenticator app, or whatever the thing is. And like, none of these is necessarily bad, right? Like none of that is objectively incorrect, because it does
Yeah,
make
but
things a little more secure.
maybe we should have just done this from the beginning,
Well,
right? I
and
mean,
and this is maybe the part where I think what I find exciting is that technology is kind of catching up to the point where we can do it better, and that is where I think like FIDO2 is fascinating, because I'm gonna maybe like, can you give us a quick overview of what Webauthn and
yes.
FIDO2 are?
So, Webauthn and FIDO2. So, you may have noticed that for a while now, you could authenticate your apps on your phone with your finger or your face, or whatever, some biometric thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I go to QFC, the grocery store,
Mm-hmm.
their app, I authenticate with my finger to buy groceries. So, um, what, you know, there has been a whole effort to try to make everything um, that you can do on apps
Mm-hmm.
also possible with the web. And that is what Project Fugu is.
Got it.
It's
Okay.
it's it's been a long journey and it's not over yet, but the whole point of Project Fugu is to give you the power in your web browser
Mm-hmm.
to do everything that you can do in your apps.
Got you.
So Webauthn is the part of FIDO2 that is about having your browser be able to call out to the OS and say, look, is this person authenticated?
Right.
Um,
And so the way that, like, my experience with FIDO2 is back maybe even years ago. I can't remember when I first heard about them, but I would see folks who were like, you know, turbo nerds would have YubiKeys,
Yes,
right? And
YubiKeys.
they'd have these YubiKeys, and I was like, what the heck is a YubiKey? And my only experience with YubiKeys is every once in a while in Slack, somebody on the team would like just drop a complete random nonsense bunch of stuff into the Slack chat, and I was like, oh, whoops, I activated my YubiKey. And I was like, oh,
Yes.
what just happened? What is that? And so for folks who haven't heard of these, YubiKeys are so is a YubiKey FIDO2? Is that the
Yes.
and
So
and what does that
YubiKey has
mean?
been, so FIDO2 is the overarching, um, you know, API, which works with YubiKeys. It works on the web. It works, you know, it's the overarching thing.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, on the web in particular, there are a lot of issues, right? Like you have to make sure that your browser supports, um, authentication. You have to
Mm-hmm.
make sure that it's going to link up great with your iOS or with any OS. So the YubiKey thing, they're trying to make it so that if you just have a physical device,
Right.
you can authenticate anywhere. And that is FIDO2.
Right.
But Webauthn says you should be able to authenticate with whatever your device has already been set up to authenticate with.
Okay.
So, for instance, on um, my phone is a Pixel,
Mm-hmm.
and so I can use the fingerprint
Mm-hmm.
thing. But maybe and actually, this particular computer that I'm on also is you can use your uh, fingerprint.
Mm-hmm.
But on iOS, a lot of iOS phones now make you use your face.
Right.
So any biometric availability that you have on your device should be available to the browser, is what Webauthn is. So, the FIDO2 thing is just whatever's on your device, you can authenticate with it.
Mm-hmm.
But the Webauthn part is that it's from your browser.
And so if I can sort of zoom out and repeat this to make sure that I understand it, the way that this works is what we've done before is you would get these like 6-digit authenticator codes from an app like Google Authenticator or something like that. And that was used as a way to sort of like two-step verify I have my username and password and I have access to the app that does the one-time codes. And that's my proof that I am me. Somebody can't just steal a password and get into my account. They have to also get this second factor, which makes it more difficult for somebody to get that information.
Right.
But the challenge with this and the shortcoming of it is that through social engineering, somebody can spoof a text message and say like, hey, this is a support company for your bank. Can you send us the one-time code and we'll like unlock your account or whatever. And unfortunately, like they're really good at this and they sound really convincing. And so they trick people into doing it. And so that second factor is,
But also companies are not good at this. So I'll give you a story. I once worked at a a fintech company,
mm-hmm,
and they had the most horrible um, login system that I'd ever seen. Like I just couldn't even imagine that this was a professional thing. And it was based on like um, a Ruby gem
mm-hmm,
that had already been um, uh, I can't remember the name, but it had already been like declared not very safe.
okay,
So they wanted to move to a React based login. I was like, well, I mean, based on what? I mean, you need to have like better crypto for this to work. And they were pretty mad about it. Um, so the main thing that I got out of that experience was realizing like even really good senior devs
Mm-hmm.
don't understand um, crypto,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so they're going to tell you to do things that are not good. And one of the things that these people wanted to do was just send an email to every one of their users saying you have to change your password.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I'm pretty sure that like groups with bad intentions look for those kind of emails and then they send them themselves.
Right.
Um, because that's how things work now. Is you have to think about the worst possible scenario where people are going to use your stuff. And
Right.
so the
You
worst scenario for you, if you have the device physically and you have your finger,
mm-hmm.
or your face or whatever, is that this is the best we can do now.
Right.
And
Well,
like,
and so to kind of move on from so we were at one-time codes, and
yeah,
one-time codes can be socially engineered, right? Like
yes,
we can get them stolen, we can get them lifted. And so this idea of using a YubiKey or using biometrics
yeah,
is that now what we're saying is it's not just like you can't socially engineer me into giving my face to you through a text message. It doesn't
right,
work that way, right? So it makes the social engineering attacks much less likely to work because you have to have a physical device, and you're
right.
in the case
What
of
is it they
biometrics,
say?
you're
It's like what something you know, something you have, or something you
oh
are
yeah.
the things that like you can build security around. And
Oh,
so
I
a
gotcha.
password is something you know,
Yes.
but that is less secure
Right.
than something you have, or so there are rules about this. And like one of the things I learned the hard way from working at a security company is like you don't need to understand every single thing.
Mm-hmm.
There are people, it's like people who make databases.
Mm-hmm.
Do you understand every single thing about how a database works? I do not.
Of course not.
But you have to trust the people who make the databases
Mm-hmm.
because they have expertise in that area.
Right.
And one of the things I learned from working at a security company is, you know, they know a lot more than you about security and about the various kinds of attacks and so on and so forth. And I'm very happy to say that my former company, FusionAuth, actually just shipped their Webauthn server. So
Oh,
they
cool.
believe in it, and if they believe in it, then I believe in it. So
Yeah, well, and I think this is like you said, it's the best we can do now, right?
yeah,
And so if the primary risk is if your second factor is something that can also be stolen, like your phone number or your email,
yeah,
then you're in big trouble, because if somebody can just spoof your SIM card to get your text messages, they can get your second factor off.
oh
If
yeah,
the auth app, the authenticator app, that's harder to spoof. You can't
mm-hmm.
you can't spoof an authenticator app, but you can socially engineer into getting that code, and then somebody can work around your
And
security and get
also
in.
people don't really like authenticator apps.
I
Like
mean, I think people don't like multi-factor auth in general because it's very cumbersome to deal with.
right,
But the idea of like if it is very difficult to spoof a fingerprint or a face and the actual device, right? Like
yes,
because you can fake a fingerprint in isolation, you
mm-hmm.
can trick a face in isolation, but the
Mm-hmm.
likelihood that someone is going to spend the effort to steal your device, copy your fingerprint, and like copy your face.
And usually they only have like 10 minutes to do it.
Right. It's very low that somebody would
Yes,
actually do that, just because like most of us aren't dealing with, maybe billionaires need to worry about this because there's a
right.
high value to stealing their accounts. But for
But when it
me, like,
comes to
the
like
$15 in my bank account is so the effort to reward is maybe out here.
yeah, but all of us have like something that we want to keep secret. And I think because of apps, we're used to dealing with it with our fingerprint or our face or whatever. So, I think moving away from username login, username and password logins is a really good thing for our whole, you know.
And so is the intention here with Webauthn that I not only is like, because what I've tried so far, like we use Okta at Netlify, for example, and you have a username and password, and also you will scan your fingerprint to get in.
No.
And so the idea with Webauthn is that we're going to skip the username and password.
You should not have to have a username and password.
Oh, so, okay.
Here's the, I think I'm sending this to you. Okay, so click that stagingpanda5.io.
Okay, yeah. So before we switch over, then let me move us into this other view here.
Okay.
Camera 2. Woo. All right, here we are. Let me move this off screen so that's a little bit less confusing for everybody. And then I will start us off by get a new tab. We're going to go to learnwithjason.dev. I just switched to Arc browser. I'm still figuring out how it works, so bear with me, please. Here we go.
What is Arc browser?
It's this nice little browser that's got like side tabs, which Edge got me onto. But then it also has this ability to do very cool things like a split browser, where you can do things like this. Woohoo. If I can spell. So check this out, right? Like you can kind of have your browser going in two ways at once, which is really good for like side-by-side work and all that. So lots of good reasons to try out Arc. It's currently invite only, but I got hooked up with an invite. I think, one of my coworkers, Prabhav, hooked me up, so thank you. But anyway, so we are live with live captioning. That live captioning is being provided by White Coat Captioning. We've got Maggie here with us today. Thank you so much, Maggie. And that's made possible through the support of our sponsors, Netlify, NX, and New Relic, who has disappeared off the list. Why? I'll figure that out. I don't know what happened. Okay. My website. So yeah, we'll fix that. But and we are talking to Joyce today. So Joyce is on Twitter at Trout Girl. Are you on? Yeah, you're on Mastodon. And I assume all the other.
Troutgirl at mastodon.cloud.
All right, let me open that one as well. There we go. So we'll drop some links here. So there's the Mastodon. Let's get back to the Twitter here. Here's the Twitter. And if you want to follow along with the captions, those are on the homepage of the site at learnwithjason.dev. Okay, so you wanted me to open up this staging.
Yes.
So I'm going to copy the link and I'm going to open it up here. Okay. So what are we looking at before we start moving?
So this is my website, which I'm building right now. And we built right away on Webauthn.
Okay.
So you need to choose passkey.
And passkey is the Webauthn. That's like the device.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, in your case, I think it'll be your fingerprint.
Yep.
Okay. So you need to choose a display name.
Okay. So we'll do one of these, and then we'll do one of these. I choose passkey, and then create.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm adding the key. Okay, so it wants to use my Bluetooth. So the USB security key would be a UB key. This device would be this whole thing. And then phone with QR code, I don't know what that is. Do you?
Yes, like it would be a phone that you had to scan the QR code. But I think you should choose this device.
Okay, so this device. Okay, and now it's asking for my fingerprint. So I'm just going to fingerprint here.
Okay. It registered you, so log in with passkey.
Okay.
Yay!
Nice.
You registered and logged in. It was that easy.
So this is great. So what I like about this is that I use my fingerprint to unlock my device every day. I use my fingerprint to like open my laptop. I use my face to unlock my phone. And so and also in doing this, I am now able to like use this without having to open my password manager and a bunch of complicated stuff that gets in my way and just prevents me from doing the things I'm trying to do on the web. So the one question that comes up with this is, okay, I've logged in here. How do I log in on my phone now if I want to do two devices?
So in fact, it should work just fine, but
Okay.
you may have to register another device.
Okay.
So let's try it.
Okay. So I have here's my phone.
Okay.
And do I just go to the same website?
Yeah, staging.panda5.io.
Okay, so I'm going to staging.panda5.io, you said?
Yeah.
/join.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm now on the site here.
Okay.
And so I'm gonna put in my Jason at Langsdorff, and then same deal. Do a J Langsdorff. Okay, do a passkey. Create. Okay, so it says that a user already exists with this email.
Oh.
How's this?
Okay.
Oh, come on, focus. Look at my. Nah, it's not gonna work. Okay. So, anyways, you can sort of see that this is happening.
Yes.
So if I go to log in then, and I log in with my passkey, it's not gonna work, right? Because I don't have my, I don't have this device registered.
I don't know. Try it.
So it says here what it's showing me is choose how you'd like to log in. It says iPhone, iPad, or Android device, and then security key. So let me hit the continue button for iPhone, iPad. And it says scan this QR code with a device running iOS 16 or later, or another compatible device to sign into Panda 5.
Oh, okay. So this is the weird thing. Like you may have to. There's this whole QR code thing which I have not quite figured out yet, to be honest. And one of the things about FIDO2 is that they want you to have a relationship with each website. So they want you to use a YubiKey,
right,
and have a specific code for each website. And I've not exactly figured out how it works when you are using two different.
So you would almost need to like. So I know that the way that I've logged into, say, I don't know, some service, you can log in with your Gmail account. And then you can also log in with your Twitter account. You can also log in with your whatever.
That's OAuth.
Right. So and in OAuth, they kind of let you add multiple things. Does it work like that with Webauthn, where I could say like on the browser I've logged in with this, but I want to add another one, and then I can do that?
It really depends on how exactly the OAuth server is set up. But I think in general, most people are not going to do that. I think that most people want just to be able to log in on one device or on one website. And that's the really hard problem here is,
I gotcha.
Do you make it so that you can do it on a device, or do you make it so you can do it on a website?
Yeah, and it looks like what CruiseX9 is saying in the chat is that there is a way for Apple to create a passkey on iCloud.
Uh-huh.
And then that credential means that any device on the same iCloud account will work, which
Oh,
is,
okay.
that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But I don't think that is how this particular site is implemented, which is okay.
Right.
But yeah, it works with iOS 16 and Ventura. Great. I don't
Okay.
know if I'm on Ventura, actually. I don't think I am. Yeah, I'm on
I don't
Monterey.
think I'm not either.
So
I'm on
looks like
Monterey.
looks like I'll need
Like,
to bump up
didn't
my OS
Ventura
version.
just come out?
I'm also like I feel like I I'm such a laggard with tech. Like I like new tech, but I never ever adopt it.
Me too. Me too. And you know why? Because when I was younger, um, you know, DevOps people would constantly tell me, don't do anything too new because we're
Mm.
not going to let you do it anyway. So, like they were pretty honest about it. They were like, don't do it. We're not going to let you do it.
Right, right,
So,
right. But yeah, I think that so that sounds like one way to solve it is that you kind of associate the passkey with a cloud account, which is interesting because then it sort of acts as both.
yeah.
Which then I guess opens the follow-up question about like, okay, but if you can get into an iCloud account from anywhere, but then Apple has the like 9 million factor iCloud login. So I guess maybe that's the way that you work around this. They're like, hi, please find every Apple device you own and touch it.
Or, no, every Apple device you've ever owned.
Yeah.
No, I mean they always have these ones that I haven't seen in like what is this? This
Mm,
2005, it's a lot. But
yeah.
um definitely the intent of FIDO2 is to let you log in to a particular website
Hmm.
from anywhere.
Hmm.
But it depends on having a YubiKey.
So right now it's either a YubiKey or it sounds like
Mhm.
a iOS 16 plus Ventura iCloud account
Yes.
is the way that you would do that with FIDO2.
Yeah. And
Okay.
I don't know of a way to do it without a YubiKey on Android, which is what I have.
Got it. Okay. So YubiKey and let me actually I have one of these, so let me go grab it real quick. So for anybody who's never seen one of these before, this is a YubiKey. It's this little device, and I can plug it into the USB-C. But then it's also got NFC on it, like the way that you like tap to pay or whatever. So I can plug this into my computer to act as a passkey, or I can tap it to the back of my phone, and that lets me log in to multiple accounts. Right. So that's the sort of the story of these, and what makes them cool is like this is my authentication. It's not the device itself, it's this thing. And that lets me move it between multiple devices because like you said, it's a thing I have,
Yeah.
which is a great way to, it's very difficult to get this from me. Right? You would have
Yeah.
to be very crafty to be able to like be logging in and also like steal the code off of this and then get it to your device within a short enough time span that it hasn't reset. And that is all. That's all very good for security. Also very easy to lose. When I first got this YubiKey, I managed to lose it within like 3 hours. Like I hadn't even set it up with anything. It was just like gone. And then weeks later, I'm not joking, weeks later, we got our house cleaned and it just appeared on a shelf. And I was like, what happened? I was like, this is gone, right? I'll never see this thing again. But it must have fallen under something or I don't know. But it reappeared. And then I had a YubiKey again. So,
Woo!
but yeah. So there was a good question from Charlie. Is this something like, so Magic Link sent via email
Mhm.
is a different strategy that I've seen for logging into sites. Is this
Yes.
something that is like, can you do that in addition to FIDO2, or is this just a straight replacement for it?
You can do it in addition to FIDO2 because there will still be people who lose their credentials.
Mm,
I mean, I don't know exactly what the best practice is, honestly, because the the things that I use FIDO2 for, which is like my grocery store,
Mm-hmm.
my bank, I have not lost one yet.
Gotcha.
So, it would be catastrophic if I lost it. Also, I just use my finger.
Mm.
So, you know, I don't actually use the YubiKey for much of this stuff except just to test.
Right, right, right.
Um, because I prefer the finger because, unless you like what was that movie where they cut people's fingers off?
I have no
Oh,
idea.
Judge Judge Dredd. Remember they
I actually didn't see Judge Dredd.
Oh, okay. It was a long time ago. You may be too young. But like it was a Sylvester Stallone movie, and
Mm.
uh, what's his name was the villain. Um, and as part of the plot, they had to get somebody's fingerprint, and
Oh,
so
okay, I got
they
you.
cut his finger off.
Yeah.
So
That has been a recent introduction of gore into movies, is this idea of like biometrics, and people do really gross things to like steal somebody's like retinal scan or whatever. It's like, oh, okay, well, that
yeah,
was maybe
yeah,
not something I needed.
yeah, yeah,
Wesley
yeah.
Snipes played the villain.
Yeah, Wesley Snipes played the villain, and he cut off the guy's finger, and I think he took his eyeball out,
Oh
and
God, yeah.
but it was all about like, okay, we're gonna have this biometric stuff that nobody had
Mm-hmm.
imagined back then. Um, so oh yeah, Wesley Snipes played the villain. Um, so anyway, like I have not figured out exactly how to deal with because Android and my computer make it so easy to just use the fingerprint.
I
Um,
gotcha.
and I should mention that some of those YubiKeys um, make you press something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have to, in order to make it work, I gotta touch the little logo on it.
Yeah, and some YubiKeys do not.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they will all work. So, when you buy a YubiKey, just look for FIDO2.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Okay. Cool. So if you want to be a turbo nerd, as I said, you can get one of these UB keys, and then this will let you use your any device that you've set up any account with the UB key. It'll work on any device as long as that device can either take a UB key as a USB-C plug-in, or can do the near field communication like a tap to pay, which most phones I think today do. So you're able to kind of use it across all of your devices. But then the future that we're looking at here is
Yes.
that we won't even need that. We'll be able to just use like me existing in my body is the authentication. I am me. We know that. So the biometrics let me prove that in a way that is difficult to spoof and that allows me to access all my stuff without passwords, without one-time codes, without extra dongles on my keychain.
And every system that has ever been built in computers has agreed that if you have physical access, they can't really stop you.
Right.
So if you have physical access, we're screwed. Um, so there you go. But the main thing that I want to point out is Webauthn is part of a whole effort that a lot of people have been working on very hard for a long time to try to make the web as useful to users as you know native apps.
What if I just want to
And
search?
yeah, I don't think most people know that much about Project Fugu
Mm-hmm.
because it's been sort of, I don't know exactly why. Their websites are terrible. Um, it's bad, but I like this one, developer.chrome.com blog/blog/, Fugu dash showcase.
Slash blog slash Fugu showcase like this.
Yes.
Okay.
Let me look quickly. And that is a much better site for, yeah. So it'll show you like a lot of the, um, uh, this is the APIs that they have.
Wow. Okay. So these are the APIs.
Hmm.
So this
These are
is
the APIs.
this is a lot because
Yeah, it's a lot.
it feels like you would, you kind of see the auth, right? And
Hmm.
you're like, that's already a pretty big thing.
Hmm.
And then you can see here there's quite a bit going on.
Yeah,
So let's see, we've got local font access, that's very cool. Gyroscope, so like phone orientation is very cool.
yeah. We
Persistence.
have like the share API is a really big one, which allows you to share on the phone or on the device in exactly the same way that native apps share.
Oh, very cool.
Well, because it's been a big thing,
Right.
as I'm sure you know. So the share thing lets you just have a view, share, delete API on the device, which is exactly the same. So, I'm sure people know how to do that. Um, Also, um, another one that's really important is WebUSB.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you've seen Dev Charlie's thing, but she figured out how to get information from planes going overhead.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Here, let me put it on your.
Here, this one, right?
Yeah.
And she just gave this talk at Jamstack Conf as well.
Yes,
Um,
exactly.
but
And
yeah,
this is
this.
amazing because you're interacting with things in the real world,
Mm-hmm.
and the web, I think, should be able to interact with things in the real world. And
Right.
then file system access is really important. That was a big part of how Photoshop did their thing
Mm.
when they put their thing on the web.
Oh yeah, here it is.
Um, yeah, and so this site will give you a lot of um, great ideas for how to use these new. And also, you need to understand that there's one thing that is holding us all back, which is Apple not supporting
So
these things
so
in
Safari is not going
Safari.
to support these. But it sounds like, and maybe this is me
Safari
being.
has supported some. So there's a website called caniuse.com,
Mm-hmm.
which will help you figure out, what the support situation is. But it's interesting because when I was young, when I was coming up as a coder, like we would just code something, then we would test it.
Mm.
These days, I tell people you need to test it before you code it to make
Right.
sure it's going to work on your platform.
Right.
Because, I've looked at jobs where for a fact everybody's going to be able to use the same browser. So all you have
Right.
to do is build for that one browser. And then on the other side of the issue, you have things that you really, really, really want to do, but it
Mm-hmm.
can only work on one browser now. And like if you need it to be public and all of those things, like what are you going to do?
Right.
So I think that the Photoshop thing was
Mm-hmm.
like that because it does not work on every browser.
Right.
It certainly does not work on every, and they're using a lot of uh, WASM,
Mm-hmm.
which is also a little bit problematic in some cases. So, for instance, my sign up, the one that you used, does use WASM because back there um, you need to have a server, a Webauthn server, and a Webauthn client. And we
Got it.
happen to be using one that's written in Rust.
Gotcha.
So it's a WASM thing.
I gotcha.
But I'm very excited about all of the new capabilities that are going to come online in the next little bit because there's a lot of pressure on Apple right now to let this happen.
Well, and it looks like too, I just searched the file system access as a first, and it looks like Safari's got it,
Yeah,
but like Firefox is missing.
right.
And so, yeah, I think depending on what you're trying to accomplish, so let's look at like Web USB. Web USB, no Safari support at all,
Right.
but also no Firefox support. Um,
Right.
and so, yeah,
And
depending on your
everybody,
demographics
Chromium is definitely the best for all of this stuff because,
for support, yeah.
yeah, I mean, that's who's paying
Hmm.
for these things. But I feel like it's very important for us as web devs to learn, to keep on top of what's possible, um, so that we can make things awesome because that's our job.
Right, yeah, and I think the other piece of it too is that by knowing that these things exist, we can make our requests known.
Yes.
I think one of the best drivers of progress is, like back in the day, and I'm not saying we should do this again. Please don't start doing this, chat. But you would go to websites, and the websites would basically say, "Hey, this doesn't work on the browser you're on. You should use this browser because it supports the features we need." And you literally have websites that people want to use driving migrations to other browsers because the browsers aren't supporting the features that are needed to build the experiences people want. And
Yes.
the trick with Safari, of course, is that like you can't put alternative browsers into an iPhone, so
Right.
there's no choice. But how people only wait so long before they make different choices. They'll start buying Android devices. Somebody will figure out how to how to work around these issues in other ways or things like that, because that's just kind of the way this stuff happens. Like the community
Yeah.
finds a way forward. So the more pressure we're applying to Apple to support an open web, the more we're showing that like the web needs to function on all devices, the more likely it is to get that support prioritized.
Yes. And I should point out that it's largely been European countries that are doing the most work here.
Hmm.
Um, we have not been super good. So, do
Uh,
we have time to talk a little bit about ML?
we do, yeah. We've got about another 20-25 minutes or so.
Okay, perfect. So, let's look at some ML because this is another area where I feel like people don't, oh, shoot, people don't necessarily understand that. Okay, there we go. Um, there's a lot that you can do today that maybe you never thought of, in terms of UX and in terms of making better user experiences for your
Hmm.
people. So this is a Google thing
Hmm.
that helps you here. It's called Teachable Machine.
Here.
Um, I will put this, I will drop this link. And what Teachable Machine does is it set up everything so that you can, all you have to do is provide the data, which
Okay.
will largely be photos or videos. So the example here is a tutorial called Banana Meter, which if you upload photos of bananas or videos of bananas in different stages of ripeness, and then you say how ripe you think they are,
Hmm.
you can train this model to say this banana is very ripe or not very ripe, or you need to eat
Oh,
it
I got it.
today or whatever. So you can use this with a lot of different kinds of photos and videos. So I know people who've done like bird watching,
Hmm.
also like weeds in their yard.
Oh,
Anything where
interesting.
you can train a model to know, oh yeah, there it is. It's like, oh, this banana is not very ripe. This banana is overripe.
Hmm.
And it'll give you an answer. Like, is this banana not ripe, perfectly ripe, overripe?
I also have I would like to challenge the author's decision of when a banana is past its prime, because that banana looks fine to me.
Really? You would eat that banana?
Oh yeah, I'd eat that
Jason,
banana. That one's not even squishy yet.
Jason. I'm gonna have to report you to
That one's gonna
Sarah.
have that's when you know that the banana is gonna actually have banana flavor. When you eat them too early, they taste like cardboard.
Or something. Yeah. So the main thing to understand about ML and how it's going to help web developers is that your job now becomes like collecting the data, which in this case is visual. In some cases, so I have another example here where it's auditory.
Oh, okay.
So here's a voice recognition. It's already been pre-trained on these words. So you just, so check this out. Oh, fuck. Why is it doing this to me?
Sorry, I got you. It was with JS.
There you go.
Okay.
Okay. So there should be a little demo here.
All right. So if I turn this on
Yes.
and it wants to access my microphone, so I will allow it. And
Just say any of those words.
2, down, no, 6, 8, go, stop.
See? It recognizes what you're saying.
Yeah, and it's picking up a little bit of blowback from my headphones, it looks like, and so that's causing a bit of chaos. But this is extremely cool. Like, and so this was done without, you didn't have to get into TensorFlow itself. You just kind of you use the teachable machine.
Mm-hmm.
That's very cool.
Yeah. So TensorFlow is not that hard to set up, but obviously most people would prefer not to do it.
Yeah.
And here's the thing that I showed at Cascadia, which I thought was very cool, which is it's a little demo where, unfortunately, I think this is a little bit of a, well, try the demo anyway.
Okay, so I'm grabbing the link address here. Let me get over here. Okay. Oh, an app to help you count things.
Yes, it helps you count things.
Nice.
Which is very cool. And this is a great UX. Like, I don't think it's necessarily like getting the perfect answer every time, but it's showing you how it got that answer, which I think is almost cooler because, you know, ML is hard to interpret sometimes.
Yeah.
Anyway, so these are all things that we need to be thinking about as we're thinking about what our next moves are in terms of UX.
Yeah.
Because look what happened with Twitter. Like, Twitter started kind of going downhill and people were worried about it. And they started building Twitter replacements or Twitter clones or whatever. But I mean, is that, you know, are these the clones we want?
Well, I think what's interesting is that, you know, it feels like in front end in general, in social media and just in a kind of a lot of spaces right now, we've become open as a group to alternatives in a way that I don't think we were even a few years ago. And so the 1000%. Conversation about React, for example, is very different today than it was even a year ago.
Oh, yeah.
And the conversation about Twitter, I mean, obviously is very different over the last week or two. But it feels like people are starting to entertain these ideas of like, well, maybe there's something different. What would it be like if we did it again? Do we need to build exactly this, or should we be building something new and different that evolves and like leaves out the stuff we didn't like and keeps the stuff we did like? And I think that what I get excited about in spaces like these is that it feels like these are the moments where something cool can happen, because there's a general interest with the community in trying new things. So if somebody has an idea, now's the moment, because this is the moment where people will try it. They're not resistant to change because they're looking for something better, right? And so I'm really excited to see what happens here, because it feels like we're in a great moment for the web's next great leap forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And people don't, like, I've been through, this is my third major, like, web
Event.
event, web recession. And the thing that I've seen every time is that it's not all bad. Like, people who want to build new things, this is your moment. This is the blue ocean. But
Mm,
also, you have to remember, like, a lot of the businesses that people worked for, the bigger companies, were monopolists. I mean, they were keeping down other, alternatives. And if they're not doing that well and they're laying off a lot of people, that's a lot of people who don't have time to come after
mm-hmm.
you. So, like, monopolies are terrible for the user. Everybody knows this. Um, and even though it's sad to see our colleagues sometimes losing their jobs, monopolies are not good for our business in the
Mm-hmm.
long run. Because let's look at Facebook. Like, how has their UX gotten better? you
Mm-hmm.
know, in the um, let's see, they came up in what, 2004. So
Mm-hmm.
it's been almost 20 years. How has their UX gotten better? I don't think it's gotten better.
I, I mean, I think you've got a good point that, like, we can't control um what's happening in the macro. Like, no matter how hard we fight, we can't change what everybody is doing right now, but we do have some control over what happens next, right?
Yes.
Like, we can choose how we respond to this moment. And is our response going to be to see if we can push the envelope a little bit and imagine something better? Or are we looking to kind of recreate the things that we missed about the past? And I think this is the kind of the fundamental tension, right? Is that some of
Yeah.
us want to keep things the way that they were when we felt they were best, and we'll fight that fight forever. And that becomes the, like, get off my lawn argument, right? And then there's others who see it as an opportunity to imagine something better, and that's where you get these really innovative next steps and next UIs and things that you didn't really think you would understand or like or enjoy, that have honestly been really, like, positively impactful. I think even, like, Twitter at the time was a wonderful innovation because it was a lower barrier to entry than full blogging, and it was centralized, and there was discovery built into it, and all these things that didn't exist on a blog or an RSS feed or things like that. And that was really exciting because you would learn something and see something new. And now, as we're seeing, I think, what might come after Twitter, there's a lot to keep about. Like, if we're bringing back, I don't think this is the time to just go back to RSS and say, you know what, all this last few years was a big mistake, we should just go back to RSS.
Right.
But, like, what does RSS and Twitter and, like, some of these newer capabilities look like? What does a world
Yeah.
look like when you build an app that's really it's built on owning your own data, so something sort of like Mastodon, but that is, maybe a little easier to set up, so like RSS, but has the delight of Twitter with the sort of adjacent discovery. So not necessarily just a feed of everybody you follow, but, like, what are they interested in? What are they talking about? Like, let me discover a little bit more beyond my immediate circle. And can we make that better so it's not driven by outrage but is driven by delight, right? Like, what could the future of the web really look like? And that, to me, is a really exciting opportunity,
Yeah.
and I really hope somebody builds it because I'm too tired.
I feel you, man. But, I mean, I want to say to people, like, even though it's a very scary time because
Mm,
people are losing their jobs, it's a very exciting time because
yes.
we can imagine a new, going forward, a new realm. And that's really what I wanted to say to people is, like, look, let's make shit awesome. I mean,
Yes.
and maybe our definition of awesome today is different than the definition of awesome, 18 years ago. And how are we going to learn how to make it awesome? How are we going to, have the opportunity to make it awesome, and how are we going to find the users to make it awesome is really what. So I run a meetup for entrepreneurial engineers, and that's what we're all talking about now. Is like, look, how do we make it awesome? Like, we don't
Yeah.
want to just like. I hear people saying, "Oh, I'm going to make a new Twitter." It's like, yeah, but if it's a new Twitter, it's already lame.
Yeah,
Like,
well,
let's make
and
something awesome.
right. What's the thing that pushes things forward, right?
Yeah.
But so okay, so for people who want to go out and push this stuff forward,
Yeah.
we looked at a lot of examples. Where should somebody go if they want to start actually like writing some of this code, if they want to build out an example or take apart a demo? So we looked at the where was it? The showcase. Okay, so I'm going to drop a
Yes.
link
And
to
I
this
think that's
showcase.
a really good place to start
Okay.
for Project Fugu stuff.
Is there anywhere
Um,
else that somebody should look like for Teachable Machine? There's
yes.
it looks
Teachable
like there's
Machine.
a get started button. That always looks good.
Yeah.
Anywhere else that you recommend for people who want to actually start getting their hands dirty with code?
So I like this Webauthn site, which let me find it. I think it's web. Oops.
Is it .guide?
Yeah.
Okay,
And,
so let's
it's
send.
a little bit. How can I put it nicely? Like, it's a little bit. I'll give you an A on the paper, but like this isn't really what we need to learn.
I got you.
You know what I'm talking about. But if you want to learn all about Webauthn
Okay.
um, from scratch, that's a great place to learn. So,
Hmm.
but the main thing is, don't just keep going to react.org. Don't just, like, things are changing really fast
Hmm.
in web development. I told you before the call that I recently moved to Remix,
Right. Right.
partly because I feel like uh, when I was young and I was a PHP developer, like, web dev was so fun. You just fired up your text editor, and you just could test, and everything was fun.
Right.
For a few years now, I've been feeling like, man, this is not fun anymore.
Mm.
The whole stack, it's big, it's complicated, there's a lot of moving parts. Even if I understand those moving parts, it's maybe not that fun.
Mm.
But Remix, I found, is very fun
I gotcha.
because
Yeah.
it's kind of, it's taking away some of the complexity, and um, I like that.
Yeah,
So
I think what I found is, the joy for me comes from finding the tools that are properly suited to my prior experience.
yes,
And one of the things that I've noticed about Remix is that for someone like me who has spent a lot of time working with like the web primitives, so plain JavaScript, plain CSS, plain HTML, Remix feels like coming home.
yeah.
After doing a lot of component based stuff and a lot of like kind of JavaScript abstractions over these things, so that I can get back
And
to
CSS abstractions.
right, like CSS and JS, the Tailwind, the like utility
Yeah.
based CSS in general. Like, I don't dislike those solutions,
I don't
but
dislike
I
them
don't
either.
like using them. They don't feel. I don't know, like to your point, it's not a joyful experience for me to write Tailwind. I do Tailwind because it's easier for my team to understand,
Yes,
right? Like
1000%.
and
And I think
that's
a lot of us do
fine.
that. It's like, oh, hey, it's not that I love this, but there's a lot of external reasons why.
Right, right,
But
right,
is it
yeah, and like
joyful? Is it like, does it make you want to open up your text editor on a Saturday
mhm.
night and like whip something out? Kind of thinking no.
Yeah, and this is, I think this is the thing is it all comes down so much to subjective experience, because to somebody who hasn't worked with all the low level web APIs, Remix might be really overwhelming because you got to learn a lot about the web to use Remix as a platform. But it really depends on where you're coming from. So if you are
Yeah.
like born and raised Remix dev, that's where you started and that's where you live, then, you know, something like Next.js is going to feel great because it's built entirely on the React structure.
Yeah.
If you're trying to branch outside of that and see what's coming, where it kind of looks like React is starting its slow slide into being legacy tech, then, you know, maybe something like Solid is going to feel really familiar. Or if you want to get more fundamentals, then something like Remix, like Quick, like I'm really happy to see that the platform is starting to play a much bigger role in the next generation of frameworks. And I'm really happy to see that it feels more collaborative than it maybe has in the past. Like, it kind of always felt like, I think we talked about this at the beginning, like two camps. And it feels less like two camps now. It feels like we are building things together again for the first time in a long time. And
Yes.
that, I mean, honestly, that's part of what puts the joy back in it for me, is because it's not fun to build something and then put it on the internet and have everybody say, why didn't you use my favorite framework? It's like, I don't know. I felt like using this one. Like, who cares?
No,
it was fun
though.
to build.
Yeah, it's true. It's like, look, you know, also, I feel like there was a whole generation of youngs, like, you know, I'm 53,
Youngs.
so I can say this.
The youths.
The youths who maybe came at things from a completely different point of view. So I'll give you an example. I have a couple guys who I'm working with, and I think they're great devs, and, you know, I really like them, but they came up where cloud was everything.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, they didn't have to put anything on a server, you know, they didn't have to make sure their servers were linked up properly, you know, whatever. Like, they just had AWS from day one.
Right.
Like, I didn't have AWS from day one. And it is a completely different mindset. Like, who's going to solve your problems? Who's going to be responsible for your problems? Is it going to be half AWS and half developer wearing a pager who doesn't know shit? Or, you know, it happens.
Yeah, and I think this is, you know, this is the balance to strike is like, you know, we can always say, oh, learn the fundamentals, and that, I think that is a valid thing to pursue, right? The more of your stack you understand from top to bottom, the more capable you will be. And in the same breath, recognizing that you cannot learn all the fundamentals because it is turtles all the way down. And right. And so, like, you know, for me,
also, I mean, I had like 25 years to learn the fundamentals, and I learned them, you know, as I went.
And like, the other thing that I've noticed is, so, you know, I'm at like about 20 years, and some of the things that I considered fundamental in 2001 are no longer fundamentals. They're now things that if I do them, it's sort of because I'm doing it for nostalgia, not because it's the right choice, right? And that's been interesting too to come to terms with, is that like, some of my best practices are not best practices anymore. There are better ways. And so when I'm talking to, as you say, the Utes, I'm always trying to, like, in the back of my head, I'm going, okay, do I not like this because it's new, or do I not like this because it's actually a bad idea? And right. That's a really challenging. I don't know. I think half the time I'm just being grumpy, but at the same time, like, sometimes I do see issues and I'm like, I don't think this is going to work the way everybody wants it to work. And
well, this is why I've often said that I feel like the best job interview that you can possibly do for a web dev is to just ask them to make a little form where, like, maybe you saved like an email address or something, and then ask them why they made every decision on that form. Because there's so many ways to do things now, you know, as you were saying, and yet you still want to know why this person made the decisions that they made, right? And also, I just feel like that's a kind of job interview where you can learn a lot about somebody and why they might have made those decisions.
Yeah, I think there's one of the ways that I love to do a technical interview is, instead of having somebody whiteboard or like defend a decision, is instead to have them show me something that they're really excited about and talk me through what they built and why. And what I find is that when somebody goes in and actually starts explaining their code, you're going to see really quickly, oh, this person really loves the front of the front end. They're talking to me about the cool CSS techniques they use. They're talking about the accessibility of the form. They're talking about this. And then the other person might look at the same project and spend all of their time talking about how cool the serverless setup is. And you start to find like, oh, okay, well, what we really need is somebody who's like ultra pumped about CSS and accessibility, because that's what the job's going to be. You're talking about serverless, and this is going to be a bad match for you, right? And so now it's not like you didn't clear my arbitrary bar of knowing things that I want you to know, but rather you showed expertise in the thing that you are excited about. You built a thing.
Okay, but I'll ask you then. I mean, I think you're absolutely right, and I love what you're saying. But I have noticed that in, front end web dev interviews, like they're often very opaque about what it is they're actually looking for. And I've been guilty of this too, right? You may in fact know 1,000% that what you want is somebody who knows, Tailwind really well. But you put that in there with like 60,000 other things.
This is definitely something that I have noticed, and I think there are many factors that contribute to this. And so ultimately I have started to give the advice, and this is terrible advice, and I'm very sorry, but it's the best I can do, is pretend that the job description doesn't exist, because it was probably written by somebody who's not doing the job. And you're going to figure out what the job is by talking to the first interviewer, as long as that interviewer is not like, get past the initial interviewer, because it's going to be a recruiter or something. Try to get to the hiring manager, because the hiring manager will tell you about the job. And that sucks, because it makes it really challenging. But if you want to work in front end, everybody's describing front end as literally every technology that's been invented since 1995. And that part is a little bit of a bummer, because, it's really not how the vast majority of companies are saying we need a front end, and the hiring manager doesn't have time to write the job description, or has never written one and doesn't have the skill to write a job description.
And it's like, oh, I'm just going to use this one that I just used for like a Java server pages person, and I'm going to use the same one for a Tailwind person.
Yeah, and if you can get to the hiring manager and you just ask the question, so if I get this job, what does the day-to-day look like? They're going to say, well, yeah, we're working on a design system, and what we really need is somebody to like help smooth out this thing. And you're going to realize very quickly what skill set they're actually looking for. And if it sounds exciting, you keep going, and otherwise you say, okay, that doesn't sound like it's for me.
Like juniors, like they're desperate often to like get that first job.
Yes.
And whatever. And I just want to say, like, don't waste your time. Like, I couldn't get this job because maybe I'm not good enough at like, Tailwind. And don't waste your time. Like, just move on.
Yes. And I think, the trick with getting that first job is that I always say to folks, like, keep showing up, because so much of succeeding in this industry is continuing to be present and like continuing to make connections. And even if it feels like nothing is happening, you're starting to get the boulder rolling. And with just about everybody I've ever talked to, you stay in long enough, it feels like nothing's happening, it feels frustrating, it feels hopeless, and now you've got 5 job offers.
Yeah,
because you stayed at it and you kept pushing. And once you hit that critical mass, you just need the first person to see your value, and everybody can sense it. I don't know what it is. There's probably some like psychological phenomenon that drives this, but I swear, as soon as everybody that I've seen get their first job, it's never one offer. It's always like they're in the late stages of multiple companies, and sometimes they take their first offer, but they were on track to get multiples because they finally cleared that hurdle.
Particularly as a woman of color, I tell people, like, you're going to have bad interviews.
100%, yes.
Like, I'm sorry, but that's how it's going to go. But the main thing that I tell myself when I'm in a bad interview is I'm not going to take myself out, right? I'm going to stay in this to win this. And it's hard because you're demoralized as soon as you get that question and you're like, I don't know how to answer this question. You're demoralized. Maybe the whole experience, one time I showed up for a Google interview, and I had been at that park, like near the Google campus,
Oh yeah.
to just like walk around and get some fresh air and like whatever. And my car died. It wouldn't start
Oh,
anymore.
jeez. When it rains, it pours.
Yeah. So like 10 minutes before the interview, I had to get on one of those bikes, those stupid bikes, wearing a pencil skirt and high heels. I get on one of those bikes, and as I'm halfway there, I realize the seat is not fixed, and so it's spinning around under my butt writing my job interview, and it was harsh. That was
Yeah.
not one of my greatest interviews, but I still told myself, like, don't take yourself out,
Right. Absolutely.
right?
Um,
Just like you don't know what these people want, you need to just hang in there, and maybe that should be our real like goal. It's
well,
not like
and I think
acing the interview. It's like hanging into the interview.
and I think it's a lot like building any relationship, right? Where it has to be two-sided, and you can feel it when you have just a great interview. You find the person who needs what you want to do, and they're excited and you're excited, and you walk out of that just feeling like this is the job, like this is the one.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it does take that patience, and I also think that you sometimes you just have to take the job to get into the industry, right? And it's not going to be the job you want. My first job was working as a like a production engineer in a like a book publishing house, and my job was to like tweak the copy on the website. I didn't really write any code. I was just capable of opening an HTML file. That was like
Hey,
I didn't
man,
last very long in that job.
We've all done those string changes.
Right. But it turns into, now I have something on my resume that then becomes the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And each one of those builds confidence, and it builds the string of successes that lets you be the thing.
Yeah. But I wish that as hiring managers, we could be more transparent about what we're actually looking for.
Very much agreed.
I've had so many friends and colleagues and proteges who the reason they got hired was some really specific skill that they had.
Mm-hmm.
Like I had one who got hired because he had done the TensorFlow for me, for something I didn't even end up using. But because he had done TensorFlow, he got hired by an AI company.
Yeah.
Or I had another one who we were trying out React Native. And he learned how to build React Native apps, which is kind of a dark art. And he got a job because his company needed somebody to build React Native apps. Like, so, and those are really specific things that they were looking for.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of times I wish that I could, instead of saying you have to have a degree and you have to have done React for 5 years and you have to done this, that, and the other thing, I wish I could just say what I really need is somebody to build this React Native app.
Right.
Somehow it's too hard for us to do that.
It is very difficult to articulate. Yeah. And unfortunately that brings us to the end of our time. So I'm going to send everybody to your Mastodon again.
Okay.
So let me drop that in the link. And then I will also drop the Twitter. Nope, not that one, this one. Anywhere else that you want people to go if they want to keep up with you or to get more resources on any of what's going on here?
No, I think that's great. I'd be happy to answer questions, and I'm really happy to have come on your stream.
Yeah, thank you so much for the time. And yeah, Charlie brought up that this would do a career advice Q&A. That's actually a good idea. Chat, if you want to do a career advice Q&A, maybe shoot me messages. You can DM me on Twitter or Mastodon. You can publicly ask me questions, shoot me emails, whatever it is, and we can put one of those together. I think that'd be a lot of fun, and I hope it would be helpful for folks. So please do hit me up if you want to do that. And while we're talking about things happening on the show, let's actually just jump over and do another shout out. We've had Maggie here from White Coat Captioning all day. Thank you very much, Maggie, for being here.
Hi, Maggie.
And that is made possible through our sponsors, Netlify, NX, New Relic, all kicking in to make this show more accessible to more people, which I appreciate very, very much. While you're on the site, you can check out the schedule. We got a lot of good stuff coming up and more getting booked all the time. So make sure you jump over there, to see what's cooking. We've got Shonday coming back. I'm real excited about having Shonday on the show. It's going to be React app performance tuning, which is going to be great. We're going to have Sebastian Lober on about doing Docusaurus 2.0. I'm in contact with a couple folks about like we're going to get a Nux 3 show on. It sounds like we're going to do a career Q&A show. We're going to do all sorts of fun things. So keep an eye on this. You can follow on Twitch, subscribe on YouTube, or add this Google Calendar. Any of those ways will make sure that you stay up to date on what's happening. With that, we're going to go find somebody to raid. Joyce, thank you so much for taking some time with us. This has been an absolute blast.
Yeah, wonderful.
Thank you all very much. We'll see you next time.